Summers in my coastal town always had a special charm. But that year, I felt like I was thrown out of my social circle. My old friends, whom I used to go to the beach or a bar with, one by one, started to get busy with their partners or work. I felt isolated, trapped in a boring and empty routine. That night I decided to go alone to a bar at the end of the pier, a place that was usually crowded with tourists. I sat in a corner, ordered a bright-colored cocktail, and tried to enjoy the night. Suddenly, two men approached, asking if the chair next to me was empty. They introduced themselves as Finn and Liam. They looked to be around 35, with a laid-back style. Finn, who was more reserved, had a faint smile, while Liam was very friendly. He quickly engaged in a conversation with me, asking very personal things, like what my dreams were or what scared me. I felt comfortable telling him, as if he were an old friend. Liam had a warm and reassuring gaze. As the night got late, Liam suggested moving to a quieter place. "I know a secret spot that not many people know about," he said. At first, I was hesitant, but he reassured me by saying, "Finn will come too. Don't worry." But when we got to the car, it was just Liam. Finn said he couldn't make it. Something urgent came up, he explained with a smile. I didn't think too much of it at the time. I just wanted to continue this fun night. He took me to a bar located far from the beach. The place was very different, hidden behind small streets. The entrance was made of old wood, and inside, the dim lighting created an old-fashioned atmosphere. He ordered me a few drinks. I clearly remember the tall glass, which contained a thick red liquid. The drink tasted a little strange, like medicine. After drinking a glass, my head felt heavy. Liam put another glass in front of me. "Here, try it again. This is the best," he said. His voice sounded distant, as if he were whispering from behind a fog. I only drank a little. After that, I don't remember anything else. I woke up in pitch darkness. The air felt cold and stuffy. I tried to move my arms and legs, but they felt heavy. I fumbled around and found myself lying on a cold concrete floor. A feeling of panic began to spread from my toes to my head. I tried to call out, but my voice was hoarse. I fumbled in my pocket, but my phone was gone. I slowly crawled, looking for a wall, and finally found a light switch. The dim light illuminated a small room, which turned out to be an old warehouse. It was full of dust, mops, and some rusty tools. In one corner, there was a closed door. I opened the door slowly and saw a steep staircase leading up into the darkness. I bravely went up. The sound of my own footsteps was the only thing that broke the silence. When I reached the top of the stairs, I saw a silhouette of someone standing in the darkness. It was Liam. "You're finally awake," he said. His voice was no longer warm and friendly, like it was at the bar. It was cold and empty. "What happened? Where am I? Where are my things?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Everything is here, on the kitchen table. Calm down. You drank too much. I was just taking care of you," he replied. "But you can't leave now." His last words were piercing. A real sense of fear spread throughout my body. He approached slowly, and I saw his eyes radiate something dark, something I had never seen at the bar. I realized I was in real danger. I saw a small broken window in the corner of the room. It was my only chance. I ran, not caring about the pain. I broke the rest of the glass with my elbow, climbed out, and fell onto the mossy backyard. I didn't stop, even when my feet tripped over tree roots. I kept running, hearing the sound of his footsteps chasing me from behind. I managed to reach the highway, out of breath and covered in mud. I saw a car approaching. I screamed as loud as I could. The car stopped. An old woman inside saw my condition and immediately helped me. She called the police and took me to the nearest hospital. Liam was never found. The police said he might have been using a fake identity. The doctor confirmed there was a foreign substance in my blood. That night, I became a survivor of something that could have destroyed my life. I will never know what his ultimate goal was. I also never saw summer the same way again. To this day, every time I see a red cocktail or hear the sound of soft jazz, I feel a little chill down my spine. That experience has changed me, making me more cautious, but also stronger. My life in Waterbury, Vermont always felt like a cycle. Summer meant returning to my parents' house, to our 2 acres where I could truly breathe. It was the place I spent my teenage years, and it felt like every corner held a memory. Behind the house was a grassy field, then the woods that stretched on for miles, and in the middle of it, a small shooting range my dad built. There were bike trails my brother and I had made since we were kids, winding through the pines and hardwoods. One day in mid-July, the weather felt strange, hot and humid, but the sky was absolutely dramatic. The clouds were thick, almost black, and rolling. In between the gaps, there was a pale yellow light that made the atmosphere gloomy. I could smell the approaching storm, a sharp scent of ozone, mixed with the smell of wet earth. I loved that smell. I checked my phone. The forecast showed heavy rain in 30 minutes, just enough time for a quick loop on the trail. I grabbed my beat-up Harrow mountain bike from the shed behind the house. The chain was a little rusty, but the wheels were still good. I pedaled out of the backyard past the shooting range and onto the trail in the woods. The trail climbed pretty steeply at the beginning. I knew every turn and every tree root to avoid by heart. In this section, the wind was blowing fiercely, roaring through the trees and rustling the leaves. It was a calming sound. The higher I pedaled, the louder the sound of the wind, and I was enjoying it. The climb ended at the top of a small hill. There was a narrow gap between the large trees, and the view down was pretty good. I always stopped there for a rest. That day, I leaned against a big oak tree, out of breath, and took out my phone to check for messages from a friend. Suddenly, the sound of the wind stopped. Not slowed down, but completely died. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. The entire forest fell into total silence. There was no rustling of leaves, no sound of crickets, nothing. The silence was so chilling, so unnatural, that it sent a shiver down my spine. I looked around, confused and uneasy. The woods suddenly felt like the wrong place to be. Then, I heard the sound. Not a natural sound. It was a very quiet, high-pitched whining sound, like something rubbing against a wire. But the sound was faint and repetitive. I tried to convince myself that it was just a hallucination. Then, the silence was broken by a sound I couldn't ignore. The loud, clear snap of a twig coming from the direction of the trail ahead of me, where I was supposed to continue. I held my breath. From behind the thick bushes, I saw it. Something. Its form was indistinct, but the silhouette was human-like, bent low, almost as if it were crawling. Its movements were strange, not like an animal. It stood still, hunched over, as if it were hiding behind the bush and watching me. I couldn't explain what I felt. It was a combination of pure terror and the sensation that I was the target. Suddenly the rain started, pounding down. The sound of the raindrops hitting the canopy of leaves above my head sounded like an explosion that broke the terrifying silence. That sound, and the sensation of the cold water on my skin, brought me to my senses. Panicking, I jumped on my bike. I didn't care about the trail. I turned around, pedaling with all my might downhill. The whole way, I didn't dare to look back. Gravity pulled me, and I was flying down fast. Thunder began to rumble, and lightning flashed, illuminating the dark forest. Usually I would be in awe, but this time, The only thing on my mind was the figure I saw behind the bush. I arrived home soaking wet. I threw the bike into the shed without locking it and went straight inside. My mom asked why I was shivering. I just said I was cold. I couldn't bring myself to explain. I went up to my room, locked the door, and lay down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that shadow behind my eyes. And I knew there was something in the woods behind my house. Something that shouldn't have been there. My name is Daniel, and I was 19 years old when this happened in the summer of 2019. My parents have a small house on a lake in North Carolina. It's a family vacation home, and usually we go there for a few weeks every summer. But that year, my parents left earlier, while I could only join them later, because I had to work a part-time job first. In the end, I was in that house alone for almost 10 days. The house is simple, one story, with a wooden deck facing the lake. There's an old wooden raft tied to a small dock and 2 rusty folding chairs that are always left outside. Inside, the interior isn't fancy. A faded brown sofa, a thin old carpet, and a small kitchen with a noisy fridge. But for me, the place always felt cozy. For the first few days, I enjoyed the solitude. I woke up late, went fishing, played Xbox in the living room, and even slept on the sofa instead of the bedroom. I felt free. At night, I often sat on the deck with a cold drink, listening to the crickets. Then, on the 4th night, something happened. Around 11 p.m., I was sitting on a folding chair on the deck. The deck light was off because I intentionally kept it dark to see the stars. Riley, the neighbor's dog who often roamed around, was in the front yard, lying down. Suddenly, he lifted his head, stared toward the lake, and barked loudly. I turned my head. In the water, I saw something moving slowly, like a long shadow on the surface of the lake. At first, I thought it was just the neighbor's raft drifting away. But then, I heard a splashing sound. It was clearly the sound of a paddle. I squinted and could finally see more clearly. There was a small kayak moving very slowly. There were no lights, just a dark silhouette with a figure sitting in it. The strange thing was, the kayak didn't approach any of the houses. It just stopped in the middle of the lake. The person seemed still, as if they were staring directly at my house. I felt uncomfortable, so I went inside and closed the sliding glass door. I tried to ignore it, turned on the TV, but it was hard not to glance at the window. The kayak was still there, not moving. About 20 minutes later, I looked again, and the kayak was gone. I tried to convince myself the person was just a night fisherman. I went up to the bedroom and fell asleep. However, the next night, the same thing happened again. This time, it was even scarier. I was watching a movie in the living room. The TV cast a bright light on the large window facing the lake. Suddenly, I saw a strange reflection, a small, white, flickering light. I turned off the TV and realized it wasn't a reflection, but a flashlight from outside. Someone was aiming a flashlight from the water directly at the living room window. I immediately turned off all the lights and crawled to the floor. My heart was pounding. I peeked slowly from under the curtain. And sure enough, in that kayak, the same person, swinging a flashlight up and down toward the house. There were no cries for help, no sounds, just the flashlight beam aimed straight at the glass. I didn't know what to do. I felt if I called the police, they would just say the person was fishing. So I stayed quiet, waiting. After a few minutes, the flashlight went out. When I dared to peek again, the kayak had moved away toward the trees at the end of the lake. I barely slept that night. The climax happened 2 nights later. I had just finished showering when I heard something on the deck, the sound of wood creaking. I came out of the bedroom with a towel still wrapped around my waist and heard the sound of footsteps on the deck boards. I froze. It wasn't the sound of a raccoon or a dog. It was heavy, rhythmic, like human steps. I grabbed a kitchen knife and crawled to the small window in the kitchen. From there, I could see a small part of the deck, and I really saw it. A person's shadow standing at the end of the dock, just a few meters from the house. They weren't moving, just standing. I immediately backed away, turned off all the lights, and locked the bedroom door. That night, I slept with a knife next to the bed, while I kept hearing the sound of the creaking floorboards as if they hadn't left. The next morning, I dared to go outside. The dock was empty, but there was something that made me almost sick to my stomach. On the folding chair where I usually sat, something had been left behind. An empty soda can, the exact same brand as the one I drank on my first night there. I immediately packed my things, put the key under a flower pot, and left before the sun was fully up. I stayed at a friend's house until my parents arrived. To this day, I've never wanted to be alone at that lake house again. And every time I hear the sound of a paddle at night, even in movies or TV shows, my hair stands on end.